George DiGianni, Train Station Fitness Show. Dr. Jeremy Webster's next to me, and also Morris Brosette, Coach Mo. We're talking with Dr. Kyra Bobinet. She's a physician who specializes in behavior neuroscience. She's also the author of a book, Well-Designed Life. Her website, drkyrabobinet.com, and it's DrKyra for Kyra. Bobinet is BOBINET.com. She wrote her thesis saying that people have a fitness type based on a secret, quote-unquote, checklist of experiences that say me in their brain. Basically, your identity. What do you identify with? And if you lose that identity, do you then lose your motivation to do X, whatever that is? Do I have it right, Dr. Bobinet?
That's right. That's right. In my research, I watch people try to exercise all the time and measure, whether they continue, whether they quit, that kind of thing. And one of the most poignant stories was a married couple. He had some high cholesterol and high triglycerides and needed to start exercising. And so his wife was a very healthy person. She went to the track every day and walked many miles. And she said, all right, you're coming with me. We're going to go on this walk together. But he quit after the first month. And in talking with them, the reason why he quit is that she liked the track, the repetition. She liked to count the amount of times she would make it around the track. And he hated that. He wanted to wander. And what he liked was walking at the flea market or, going to new towns and doing some window shopping. And that's how he wanted to get his walking in. So, there's these different types of exercisers that it's kind of a secret combination in your brain, and once you figure it out, then you'll stay with it.
So it comes back to identifying what's most important to you and how are you going to do it. Not how should you do it, not what should you do, but what will you do.
I think that's huge.
Yeah, that's
important.
right. Yeah.
Go ahead, Dr. Bobinet.
Oh, I was just saying, 95% of our behaviors are on autopilot. They're run by our unconscious mind, and so that's the brawn of our brain. The weaker muscle group, if you will, is the sort of what I call the slow brain, which is that sort of, executive control area, the part of us that sets goals, the part of us that is willpower, the part of us that makes decisions. So it's more effective if we actually find something that matches our unconscious mind, our unconscious sensations even. There's little codes in our head of how much I want to sweat, how much I want to hurt, how much I want to try, how much I want to be surrounded by others or be alone. And we don't pay attention to those signals, and we don't realize that that's what's causing us to quit the things that we sign up for.
Is there an exercise someone can do today as a takeaway to help them identify what the crux of their issue is that prevents them from exercising or from eating well, or that would propel them to go into a certain direction, such as the husband who wanted different scenery and stimuli? Is there a way he could have identified that without having first gone through being uncomfortable and doing something he didn't want to do and just giving up doing what he wanted to do before he even embarked upon it?
Yeah, I think so. Just like you would shop for a car and say, I want this kind of car. I want it to have this many seats. I want to have this kind of, four-wheel drive or two-wheel drive. You can make a list for yourself and saying, this is what works for me. It may be an outdated list, in which case you need to tinker and tweak with it and see if that still applies to your body today. But it's a good starting place to really get clear about, what are sort of the underlying patterns of what I stick with versus what I quit.
So sit down and write what's most important to you and how you want to do it. You have to write it out is what you're saying.
Right. And I think, again, going back to trainers and coaches, they're really good at intuiting these kinds of things. They don't realize that they're working with the brain when they do that, but they definitely tap into this. Good ones always tap into that.
And stop me if I'm overstepping here, but is there a way to change the perception of me? If I'm the type of person and I know that fitness is just not part of me, but I want it to be consciously, can I do something to change that so that I don't just constantly fail and every time I try to get fit?
That's right. Yeah. For people who don't have a self-image as an exerciser, maybe they were overweight as a kid, maybe they had so much shame, maybe their family wasn't didn't train them to work out at all, or whatever their history is, they have to find another self-image to hook it to. For example, I want to be healthy because I want to have energy to play with my kids. Or some people put themselves, in a position where they are an instructor for day camps or for other people, for the elderly or something like that. And so they have to be fit because they're in service to others. Or another one might be, I do charity walks or I train for a marathon because my sister had cancer and I want to, help raise money for cancer. There has to be some other, dominant motivation that I feel comfortable with in order for me to tuck in the fitness part.
So how do we tie this into someone today who's going to approach or address their New Year resolutions differently? What does that begin to look like?
Yeah, I think, again, it starts with this list of what is it that works for me and what is it that I quit and why do I quit when I quit.
But I think we also have to look at, Dr. Bobinet, we also have to look at people who did not have exercise and or eating well as a part of who they were growing up because their parents were always busy on the go. Maybe they were fat, they were unhealthy, they didn't care about themselves, they had low self-worth, and you put all that into that melting pot. And then for an adult who has not had that part of their life to then instill that into their life, I think it's probably the most difficult challenge they could have. And someone who's not in tune may not be compassionate, empathetic, and be able to see what they are struggling with and help them to address this issue, because it's more of a psychological play, I think, than it is just the exercise.
Yeah, so let's go there. So, I find that the most resilient mindset that somebody can have, and this is why I focused on that in the book, is I noticed that people who are able to come back from those kinds of childhoods or trying to, keep themselves going, even if they get ill or even if they get injured, had the mindset of, I'll call it a designer, somebody who, treats their body, treats their goals as, like a car enthusiast tinkers with an old car, just keeps iterating, keeps tinkering and tweaking what's working for them, and they never think that they're done. They just think that that's the next thing for them, or that's the next project for them. And Steve Jobs, who, with the iPhone, didn't come out with this perfect end all be all iPhone. He was known as the great tinkerer. He was tweaking his way into success. And that's what I find makes the difference between those that succeed and those that fail. People who fail have this kind of, win-lose mindset versus a process mindset of a designer.
So people set themselves up to fail by setting unrealistic expectations. They're not managing their expectations and emotions properly, which is, I think, a goal in and of itself.
That's right. And, the way your brain works, when you start something new, you have kind of a superhighway of the old behavior that you're going to default to whenever you're tired or lose focus or, get stressed or any of those things. You're going to go back to your old ways. And so, this new neural network that you're building in your brain, because your brain can produce new habits, it can produce new connections. It's almost like a little tiny road, a dirt road, for a long time. And then after about a year, your brain says, all right, you want to use that road, I'll pave it for you so that you can go faster. And then it's a choice between two competing highways in your mind. Again, when you're stressed, you're going to go down the old highway. But, most of the time, if you stay focused, you'll go down the new highway.
So this is a little bit discouraging, I'm sure, for people who have tried for many years to tackle any goal. And I'll give you one experience of many, many experiences that I had with a client years ago. Dr. Bobinet, I don't train anymore. I did, and that was 17 years ago. I haven't trained anybody in quite a while. But I have a story about someone who lost 100 pounds with me in 1 year. Mm-hmm. He worked out 5 days a week, 6 days a week. If I said jump, he said how high with his eating. I was so proud of him. He looked amazing. A year later, almost to the time we began, his mom died. He defaulted back to who he was growing up as a child and his mentality and loss and how he dealt with loss. Mm-hmm. And like you said, we have those two roads. It's quite important for anybody who's trying to change whatever they want in their life. I don't care what it is, from however you operate, to know that when trauma happens, when you get pissed off at somebody, you have a loss, something's not going your way, whatever that is, that we tend to default back to how we operate, how we communicate, how we feel, all of that. And if we're not aware of that, then we are setting ourselves up for failure. Not that we are a failure, but we're setting ourselves up for failure and losing all of that traction that took us a year or however long to gain. That's scary. Because I don't care if your goal is health and fitness or finances or business or relationships. You know, you work on yourself, and then all of a sudden something happens that's traumatic, and you default back to how you normally operate.
Habits.
Yeah.
I had the exact same thing happen with a client. Same thing. This guy lost almost 100 pounds, and we stopped training together for various reasons, business-wise, and I found out that him and his wife were getting a divorce, and through a friend, he gained all the weight back and more. So I think it's very important as a coach or as a trainer, you have to identify these default triggers and have an action plan for them. Just like we talked about last week, right? You're going to go to a party, have a plan. You need to have a plan for those psychological triggers that are going to set you back. You have to work on that.
Dr. Bobinet, don't expand upon this yet, but do you have an idea about how someone can identify those triggers in your book or even just in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think that...
Well, don't expand upon it. As long as you do, let's talk about that coming up next, because I think, in my opinion, maybe the first most important part of this show is helping people identify what those triggers are. The second most important part of the show so far, anyway, is being able to sit down and write that checklist. So let's talk more with Dr. Bobinet coming up next.